Somewhere in the deep human past, a person wakes up and cannot get off the ground. Not because of an animal attack or a fall, because of something moving quietly inside their own body. Fever burns beneath the skin. Every muscle feels borrowed and weak. The world spins the moment they try to sit up. This person is not unconscious. They can hear the camp around them. They can smell smoke, food, and damp earth. But they cannot stand for long. They cannot walk to the river for water. They cannot gather food or prepare a meal. They cannot keep the fire fed or the shelter dry. If the group moves today, they cannot keep pace. If danger comes close, they cannot run. Sickness has taken away almost everything a person needs to stay alive alone. The first question is not what could cure them. The first question is who performs the work of survival when the sick person no longer can. Ancient skeletons sometimes preserve part of the answer. Some bones show healed damage so severe that independent survival would have been extraordinarily difficult. Some of those individuals lived for years afterward. Something gave their bodies enough time to heal. Being sick in the ancient world was not a day off from survival. It was survival shutting down, one task at a time. The disease itself was only the first danger. Everything it took away could become another danger of its own. A disease rarely had to work alone. It could kill through a chain of smaller failures. A weakened person might stop drinking enough water. An illness that emptied the gut could drain fluids faster than the body could replace them. An injured leg could worsen if the person kept walking on it. A sick person could lose access to food if no one gathered it for them. They could lose shelter if no one maintained it. They could lose warmth if no one rebuilt the fire. They could lose protection if no one stayed close enough to notice danger. None of this required an understanding of germs or infection. Ancient people did not need a microscope to recognize patterns. They could watch someone decline faster when left cold, thirsty, exhausted, or exposed. They could also watch someone regain strength when those problems were reduced. Care did not need to identify a pathogen to interrupt some of its effects. Bringing water addressed one danger. Sharing food addressed another. Allowing rest reduced the strain on an already struggling body. Simple protection kept a second injury from landing on top of the first. No illness followed one fixed sequence. A fever created different problems than a fracture. A gut infection created different problems than a wound, but the underlying pattern repeated often enough to matter. The earliest form of healthcare may not have looked like medicine at all. It may have looked like someone quietly taking over a sick person's daily tasks until they could manage them again. The idea sounds reasonable, but prehistoric caregivers left no journals, case notes, or medical charts. So what physical evidence has survived to support it? Illness is difficult to find in a skeleton. A fever usually leaves no mark on bone. A stomach infection disappears with the soft tissue of the person who had it. Trauma survives far better in the archaeological record. Archaeologists can identify healed fractures, amputations, degenerative joint damage, and long-term physical impairment. These conditions are not identical to fever or infection, but they can remove the same basic abilities. They can prevent a person from walking, gathering food, carrying water, or defending themselves. Cases like these do not show how every illness was treated. They do show that some ancient groups supported people who could not meet all their own survival needs. One of the clearest examples comes from Shanidar cave. There, researchers found a Neanderthal, known as Shanidar 1. This individual suffered serious injuries that likely affected his eyesight and severely weakened one arm. His arm shows long-term signs of disuse. He also had degenerative joint damage and evidence suggesting substantial hearing loss. Despite these limitations, he reached an age considered old for a Neanderthal, probably somewhere in his late 30s or 40s. His major injuries show signs of healing. Researchers see this combination as consistent with some level of social support. A person with impaired sight, hearing, movement, and arm function would have faced serious limits in unfamiliar terrain. Remaining part of a mobile community may therefore have required flexibility from both Shanidar 1 and the people around him. The bones cannot reveal who helped him, how often, or which tasks he still performed alone. He may also have adapted and contributed in ways archaeology cannot detect. Another important case comes from Liang Tebo cave on the island of Borneo. Archaeologists found a young person whose lower leg had been deliberately removed, likely during childhood, around 31,000 years ago. The cut was controlled, and the surviving bone shows no clear evidence of severe infection. The bone remodeled and healed. That person lived for roughly 6 to 9 more years before burial. Surviving and healing on that scale would have been far more likely with protection, continued access to food, and time to recover. The remains cannot reconstruct the daily routine or emotional relationships behind that survival. They also cannot tell us whether one caregiver did most of the work or whether responsibility shifted across the group. What they preserve is the biological result. A young person survived an operation, healed, and continued living for years. Bones preserve damage extremely well. They preserve the conversations beside the injured person much less clearly. Archaeology can show that prolonged survival happened. Biology can help explain why basic care made that survival more likely. Ancient humans had no antibiotics, lab tests, or germ theory, but the human body already carried its own defenses. The immune system could respond to injury and infection. Blood could clot and slow bleeding. Inflammation could isolate damaged tissue. Skin and muscle could repair themselves. Bone could slowly knit back together after a fracture. Fever could sometimes form part of the body's response to infection. Even the urge to rest could reduce activity while the body was struggling. These systems were powerful, shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressure. They were also unreliable. They failed often. Sometimes they failed completely, no matter how young or strong the person was. Recovery, when it happened, required time. It required energy for repair. It required fluids to keep tissues and organs functioning. It required protection from anything that might interrupt the process. This is where the difference between curing and caring becomes important. Curing means acting directly on the cause of disease. Caring means keeping a person stable long enough for their body to have a chance to recover. Ancient people could rarely do the first. They could often manage some version of the second. A person fighting infection still needed water. Healing tissue still needed food. A fracture needed protection from repeated movement. A severely weakened person needed shelter from cold, heat, and exposure. No single action was a universal cure. Different illnesses strained the body in different ways. But basic care gave the body's defenses a better chance to complete the work they were already attempting. This is why apparently ordinary acts could become medically important without being medicine in the modern sense. A cup of water, a protected wound, or one more day of rest could remove an obstacle the body did not have enough strength to overcome alone. The body could fight. What it could not always do was fight while gathering food, finding water, staying warm, and watching for danger. When illness removed those abilities, someone else had to carry them. Caregiving worked because the group took over the survival tasks the sick person could no longer perform. That help often happened in layers. The first layer was preventing immediate collapse. Someone brought water to a person too weak to reach it. Someone shared food that was soft enough or simple enough to eat. Someone kept the fire burning and the shelter usable. Someone allowed the person to rest instead of forcing them to travel or work. The most basic forms of care required no formal medical training. They required attention, effort, and a willingness to spend both on someone else. The second layer was preventing the condition from getting worse. A caregiver might limit movement around an injured limb. They might shield a wound from dirt and repeated contact. They might help a weakened person remain close to the group during travel. They might watch for signs that recovery was beginning or danger was getting closer. There was no universal protocol behind this. There were practical responses learned through observation. The third layer was attempted treatment. People may have used plants believed, or repeatedly observed, to ease pain or swelling. They may have relied on an older relative or someone especially experienced with injuries, childbirth, or sickness. Treatment mattered, but it sat on top of basic support rather than replacing it. One drink of water could not carry someone through a week of illness. One meal could not restore a body weakened over many days. Care had to return with water, food, shelter, and attention. That repetition is easy to overlook because it leaves no dramatic object behind. A stone tool can survive for thousands of years, while a week of quietly bringing water leaves almost nothing archaeologists can hold. Picture the person from the opening still lying beside the fire. They are weak, but they are no longer facing every danger alone. Care of this kind cost real time, labor, food, and patience from the people around them. That cost makes long-term survival after serious illness or injury so meaningful. It was not luck alone. It was another person's legs walking to the water source. It was another person's hands preparing food that could be eaten. It was the group's shared alertness and accumulated experience guiding decisions. For a time, the sick person survived on abilities that were not their own. Care may have begun as an instinctive response to someone in trouble. Repeated often enough, it could become something closer to knowledge. Repeated experience leaves patterns, even when no one writes them down. An injury kept still may have seemed to heal better. Certain foods may have been easier for a weak stomach to hold down. Some plants may have appeared to dull pain or reduce swelling. Dirty or repeatedly disturbed wounds may have worsened more often. Caregivers may also have learned the signs of improvement. They may have recognized the signs that meant real danger was near. Over time, some people probably became more familiar with this work than others. One person might grow skilled at recognizing injuries. Another might learn how to prepare local remedies. Someone else might gain experience supporting childbirth. An older caregiver might simply remember more cases than anyone else in the group. It would be a mistake to assume that every prehistoric community had the same kind of healer. Some groups may have recognized a special role. Others may have spread the work among relatives or experienced adults. What mattered was not a universal job title. What mattered was shared memory. One useful observation could become a habit. A habit repeated and taught could become a tradition. A tradition could outlive the person who first noticed it. Useful knowledge did not require a correct explanation. A group could be wrong about why a practice worked and still preserve it because the result seemed helpful. Some inherited practices were probably effective. Others were useless. Some may even have been harmful and survived because no one could test them properly. A community did not need a medical school to recognize that someone who had seen many injuries understood more than someone facing their first. Experience could improve care, but care remained expensive. Food had to be shared with someone who could not currently gather it. Time had to be spent on someone who could not immediately return the labor. So the harder question remains, why spend scarce resources on a person who, for now, cannot contribute in the usual way? Caring for a sick person was never free. It cost time and labor. It could mean less food for everyone else. It could slow travel or force others to carry more work. One of the strongest reasons may also have been the simplest. The sick person could be a child, parent, partner, sibling, or close companion. Humans form deep attachments. People often protect those they love, even when doing so carries a real cost. That attachment also supported reciprocity. In a group where sickness did not automatically mean abandonment, every member gained a quiet form of security. Help given today made future help more likely. Recovery offered another practical reason. Many illnesses and injuries could be temporary rather than permanent. Supporting someone through a difficult stretch might restore a fully capable and experienced member of the group. Even when full recovery never came, a weakened person could still contribute. Someone unable to hunt might remember safe routes. They might identify useful plants. They might repair tools or watch children. They might teach a skill to someone younger. They might recognize danger before anyone else noticed it. Care could therefore protect more than one body. It could preserve knowledge, relationships, and cooperation inside the group. Communities that supported recovery may have retained more experience over time than communities that did not. These motives are not a proven law of prehistoric behavior. They are plausible reasons supported by what we know about human social life. Together, they point towards something important. A group did not have to choose between emotion and survival as if only one could be practical. The emotional bond that motivated care could also preserve skills, trust, and future cooperation. Compassion did not necessarily compete with survival. In many situations, compassion was one of the ways survival became a shared project instead of an individual one. Care could be practical, adaptive, skilled, and deeply human at the same time. But no one could count on it always being enough. This is not a story where care always worked. Ancient caregivers faced conditions they could not reverse. The same support surrounding the person from the opening scene might have ended in recovery. It might also have ended in death. Severe infection could spread faster than any available response. Major blood loss could not be replaced. Serious respiratory illness could overwhelm the body within days. Extreme dehydration could kill quickly, especially in children. Complicated childbirth could threaten both mother and child. Extensive trauma, organ failure, and prolonged malnutrition often had no effective solution. Some remedies were genuinely helpful. Some were harmless but useless. Others were dangerous and continued only because tradition said they worked. An old practice was never automatically a good one. Some people died despite continuous care. Others may have been abandoned when a group lacked enough food, safety, or time to support them. The evidence also carries a built-in bias. Healed bones draw our attention toward people who survived long enough for recovery to become visible. Those who died before healing leave no healed injury that can reveal what prolonged support might have achieved. The archaeological record therefore highlights some successful survivals more clearly than failed attempts. The achievement of ancient caregiving was never that it defeated disease. It was that care sometimes prevented immediate collapse. It kept the possibility of recovery alive a little longer. Care did not guarantee survival. It could turn a desperate chance into a better one. That difference was sometimes the entire space between life and death. Modern medicine would later transform those odds beyond anything ancient communities could imagine. But the oldest layer of healthcare never disappeared. It was built on presence, support, and the decision not to leave a weakened person alone with every danger at once. Modern medicine can do things no ancient community could have imagined. It can often identify the pathogen causing an illness. It can directly control many infections. It can replace lost fluids, perform surgery, manage pain, and monitor a failing body in real time. It can prevent diseases that once killed enormous numbers of people. None of this should be minimized. Modern treatment can act on causes ancient caregivers had no tools to understand. But something older still sits beneath that technology. A sick person still needs water and nutrition. They still need rest, warmth, and protection. They still need someone watching for warning signs. They still need support and, often, simple human presence. Technology can attack the disease itself. Care still protects the person carrying it. Return to the person from the beginning. They are too weak to reach water, prepare food, or maintain shelter. What gives them a chance is not an understanding of pathogens. It is the people who keep weakness from closing every remaining path back to health. That is the direct answer to the question this video began with. Ancient humans kept the sick alive by taking over the basic tasks illness made impossible. They shared water, food, shelter, protection, labor, and hard-won knowledge. They could not reliably cure most diseases, but they could help keep a struggling body from facing thirst, hunger, exposure, injury, and isolation all at once. Human survival was never only about the strength of individual bodies. It was also about people willing to carry survival for someone when it had become too heavy to carry alone. Long before humans could reliably treat disease, they had already learned how to protect the person suffering from it.